What if the universe never ignored you, but simply couldn't hear you? Beneath every effort to manifest, every whispered affirmation and vision board dream, there's a forgotten truth. The quantum field doesn't respond to what you say. It mirrors what you are. Tonight, let's slow down and settle into something deeper. Imagine soft lamplight spilling across a quiet room. The windows open, the air still. Nothing needs to be solved right now. Just listen to. Subscribe to our channel. And while you're here, tell us, where are you listening from? Which version of yourself quietly brought you here tonight? Because this story isn't about manifesting with force. It's about remembering how to vibrate with alignment. We'll journey into the spaces where effort softens into resonance and desire becomes identity. You'll discover that reality doesn't wait for proof. It responds to frequency. The question is no longer, what do you want? The question is, who are you being while you wait? Let's begin. There is a kind of silence that isn't empty. It's dense, alive, and listening. And if you found your way to this moment, it means that silence has heard something inside you. Not the words you speak out loud, not the plans you make in notebooks or journals, but something subtler, a signal, a quiet emotional frequency beneath all the doing and deciding, a resonance that the quantum field has never once ignored. Because in the reality, you were taught to navigate results, follow effort, rewards follow action, and dreams come true only after discipline bends the world into shape. But in the deeper, stranger fabric of existence, the one that hums beneath the surface of matter and time, your reality is shaped not by how hard you try, but by what you vibrate as. This story is not about trying harder. It's not about fixing yourself, earning your dreams, or chasing a version of life that always seems one step ahead. This story is about frequency, the one you emit without realizing, the one you wake up inside every morning before your feet touch the floor, the one that's more powerful than any affirmation, any plan, any effort. And here's the first soft truth. The universe isn't withholding your desires. It's simply matching your signal. You don't need to convince it. You need to become coherent with it. Coherence is not intensity. It's not shouting your dreams into the void. It's not obsession disguised as passion. Coherence is alignment. It's when your thoughts, emotions, and nervous system begin to agree on who you are. That's when reality starts to shape itself differently. Not because it's rewarding you, but because it finally understands what you're saying. Have you ever walked into a room and felt something heavy in the air, like grief or tension, even if no one had spoken a word? That's frequency. Have you ever sat beside someone who said all the right things, but something in their presence felt off? That's frequency. And have you ever met someone who didn't say much, but their presence made your whole system soften, like safety arrived? Without explanation? That's also frequency. We are speaking all the time, not just with language, but with state, with how we hold ourselves, with the rhythm of our breath, with the thoughts we repeat in silence. The universe listens there. So what happens when you want something deeply, peace, love, abundance, but your inner rhythm still hums with fear or lack or old beliefs? You don't get punished. You don't get ignored. You simply receive a reflection of what's stable inside you. Reality isn't cruel. It's precise, like a tuning fork that only vibrates with what matches it. If you are vibrating in self-doubt, the world will hand you more reasons to question. If you are vibrating in unworthiness, it will echo that back with opportunities that bypass you. Not because it's rejecting you, but because it's reflecting you. This is why so many people feel confused when their affirmations don't work, when their vision boards stay silent, when they journal and meditate and script but still feel stuck. It's not because their technique is wrong. It's because their energy is scattered. They are asking for one life while vibrating as another. And the field always answers what you are, not what you pretend to be. Now imagine this. Right. Now, there are infinite versions of you encoded in the quantum field. One version is already healed. Another version is deeply in love. Another is living in purpose, in peace, in abundance. They are not out there. They are not waiting in time. They are vibrationally adjacent. And your task is not to chase them. It's to align with them. To shift your internal frequency until your nervous system stops bracing for the worst and starts expecting the inevitable. This shift is not easy, but it is simple. It starts not by fixing what you believe is broken, but by remembering that nothing essential in you ever was. The world taught you to doubt your signal, to override your inner knowing, to wear masks that distorted your coherence. And now, the work is not to add more but to subtract, to shed, to dissolve everything that distorts your native frequency so that your true resonance can re-emerge. Let's explore this gently. Picture a child. She believes her drawings are masterpieces. She sings without needing to be in tune. She doesn't apologize for joy. Her desires are not filtered through shame or permission. She exists in frequency, in presence, in being. And that's why life responds to her with immediacy. Children manifest without knowing the word, because they do not yet doubt their deserving. They are coherent, then something happens. Rules, conditioning, reprimand. They learn that who they are isn't always safe. That love is conditional. That joy must be earned. And so they begin to split, to adapt, to perform, to protect. And with every adjustment, their frequency drifts from coherence into coping. They forget the native signal, but it doesn't disappear. It waits. Now fast forward. You're here. An adult with a full memory bank of why you shouldn't trust life. Why love might leave. Why success might require sacrifice. Why peace must be postponed until all loose ends are tied. And your nervous system has memorized that version of you. It wakes up and calibrates to it each morning like default software running in the background. But something else is happening too. A flicker, a nudge, a question. Maybe that version isn't all you are. Maybe there's a signal you've buried. So deeply it feels like someone else. But it's you. The one who doesn't try to prove. Who doesn't beg for worth. Who simply is. And that version is not an idea. It's a frequency waiting to be stabilized. So how do you stabilize a frequency? You start by becoming honest about what you feel, not as a punishment, but as an initiation. Most people try to manifest over there. Truth. They chant abundance while feeling scarcity. They visualize love while vibrating mistrust. But energy is not fooled by words. It responds to congruence. This is why the path of quantum alignment begins with nervous system safety. You cannot embody joy while your body is bracing. You cannot welcome love while your gut is clenching. You cannot tune to peace while your breath is shallow and afraid. So we begin by creating coherence within the body, not through control, but through compassion. Close your eyes just for a moment. Notice where the tension lives. Is it in the chest, the throat, the stomach? These places are not the enemy. They are antennas trying to communicate. Ask them gently, what am I still carrying that no longer needs to belong? And listen not to fix, but to feel. This act of meeting yourself shifts more than any manifestation ritual ever could. Because now, you are no longer resisting your current frequency. You are understanding it. And understanding is the first step toward transmutation. Every emotion is a frequency. Shame, gratitude, anger, joy. These are not moods. They are energetic codes. They interact with the quantum field in real time. And when you become aware of your emotional landscape, not to suppress it, but to harmonize, you become a conscious participant in creation. Now, Here's a strange truth that quantum physics confirms. Reality does not exist independently of observation. The act of observing something changes it, and not just intellectually, emotionally, vibrationally. The version of reality you focus on becomes the one that hardens into form. This means your attention is sacred. Where you place it, reality blooms. And yet, most people hand their attention to fear, to comparison, to past pain. Not because they are weak, but because it's familiar. The nervous system finds safety in what it can predict, even if that prediction hurts. But you are not bound to predictability. You are built for coherence. And when you begin to place your attention not on what is lacking, but on what is arriving, something miraculous begins to occur. The quantum field reshapes itself, not to please you, but to match you. Let's stay here, in this noticing, in this remembering. You don't need to figure it all out tonight. You don't need to build a vision board or recite a mantra. You simply need to feel the signal beneath the noise, the one that's been waiting for you to hear it again. And once you hear it, really hear it, you'll realize you are never trying to manifest a new life. You are trying to remember the frequency of who you truly are. The frequency you emit isn't created in grand gestures. It's shaped in the smallest, most invisible moments. It lives in the way you exhale after a difficult thought, in the glance you give your own reflection before speaking, and how you choose to interpret silence. Most people imagine that transformation arrives like lightning sudden, spectacular, irreversible. But the truth is softer than that. Real transformation happens like tuning, a gradual turning of the dial. Not louder, but clearer, and clarity begins in the body, not in the mind, not in strategy, not in declarations of readiness, but in the nervous system, because the body doesn't lie. You can say you're ready for love, but if your chest tightens when it gets too close, the field listens to that. You can affirm abundance, but if your stomach clenches every time you check your bank account, the signal you send is still scarcity. You don't vibrate based on what you hope for. You vibrate based on what you habitually feel safe embodying. And this safety, this emotional permission to receive, must be taught to the body again, gently, rhythmically. The future you want does not arrive as a reward, it arrives as a reflection. And that reflection begins to change the moment you stop performing and start becoming. You see, the performance version of you knows all the right words. It plays the part. It smiles when it's supposed to. It nods in agreement while the inner self aches for a different truth. This part of you may even look confident from the outside. But inside, it's bracing for disappointment, bracing for rejection, bracing for life to remain unchanged. And coherence cannot survive in this split dot, so the real work is not in forcing the performance to be more convincing. The work is in retiring it entirely, to allow your inner world to meet the outer world without disguise. And yes, that's terrifying, because most of us were taught that being fully ourselves was a risk, that authenticity could cost us love, safety, or belonging. But that belief is part of the old frequency, and to live inside the new one, it must be dissolved, not violently, but with sacred attention. Imagine sitting with that belief like you would a frightened child, not scolding it, not arguing with it, but holding it, saying, I see you. I know you are trying to protect me, but I don't live there anymore. This simple act of presence is how frequency starts to shift. Because you are not rejecting the old, you are metabolizing it. Integration is the foundation of quantum change. Now, take this even deeper. In the quantum field, time is not linear, it's layered. This means that your future self is not on a distant timeline. That version of you is already here, existing vibrationally, waiting for emotional permission to take the lead. And emotional permission is not given through ambition, it's given through regulation. When your body feels safe enough to stop racing, your frequency expands. You stop reacting to old triggers and start stabilizing a new identity. This is why emotional fluency is the gateway to manifestation. When you can name, hold, and navigate your emotions without collapse, you become the kind of vessel that coherence flows through. You no longer ask the universe to bring something that contradicts your current state. You invite it into a reality you've already begun living. And when that alignment becomes stable, the quantum field has no choice but to respond. Because observation creates form. And how you observe yourself determines how the field observes you. Let's slow that down. You observe yourself every day, often without realizing it. The stories you tell in your head, the labels you repeat, the assumptions you make about what's possible. These are not just thoughts, they are selections. Each one is like a frequency fingerprint. And whichever story you stabilize becomes your broadcast signal. You may think, but I didn't choose this version of life. But here's the softer, more empowering truth. You inherited a signal and then forgot to retune it. From your parents, from culture, from trauma, from moments where you adapted to survive. These old signals are not flaws, they're just outdated. And your awareness of them is the turning point. Because when you become aware, you begin to choose again. And the field listens immediately, not to your new plans, but to your new signal. The universe is not testing you, it's mirroring you. This means that discomfort is not failure, it's feedback. When something feels off, it's not because you're doing it wrong. It's because your current vibration is brushing against a different timeline, a different self, a frequency that's asking for coherence. And your discomfort is the gap between who you've been and who you're becoming. Close that gap slowly. Not with perfection, but with pattern. Start noticing what your body does when you speak your desires. Does it constrict? Does it relax? That's your frequency speaking. Does your breath get shallow or deep when you imagine being seen, being loved, being fully free? These responses are not random. They are the tuning of your reality. Now let's talk about something even more intimate. Identity. Most people think identity is fixed, that it is shaped by memories, personality, or external roles. But in quantum mechanics, identity is frequency. It's not who you think you are. It's what you consistently feel safe being. If you were shamed for being expressive, your identity will likely form around silence. If you were praised only when you performed, your identity might cling to productivity. These identities are not wrong, but they are narrow. And your expansion requires you to meet the edges of them and ask softly, is this still true? The moment you question identity with compassion, not judgment, you begin to shift it. And when your identity shifts, everything else follows. Because the field doesn't follow your dreams. It follows your definition of self. That's why someone can chase success for decades and still feel like an imposter. Because their signal says, I'm not enough. That's why someone can be surrounded by love and still feel alone. Because their nervous system says, love is unsafe. That's why abundance can enter your life and slip away just as fast. Because the body still vibrates in survival. Don't receive what you want. You receive what you consistently are. Not on the surface, but in the vibration beneath language. And here's a gentle miracle. You can change that vibration today. Not by doing more, but by observing differently. Try this. Close your eyes and picture the most peaceful version of yourself. Not successful, not admired, just at ease. Breathing fully, loved, unhurried. Ask your body, how would I stand, walk, speak if I already lived here? Don't force it, just listen. The answer won't be loud. It will be subtle. It might be a deeper breath, a softened jaw, a slower rhythm in your thoughts. That's alignment. That's the signal you want to stabilize, not because it tricks the universe, but because it tunes you into the version of life that already holds what you're asking for. You don't earn coherence. You remember it. And that remembering happens in the body long before it reaches the mind. This is why nervous system regulation isn't just self-care, it's spiritual alignment. Because a calm nervous system can hold new frequencies without collapse. Every time you breathe deeply, when fear rises, you're choosing coherence. Every time you soothe your inner child instead of silencing them, you're tuning your signal. Every time you observe yourself with softness instead of critique, you're changing the electromagnetic field around your body. And eventually, reality responds not as a reward, but as a match. Because you didn't just think differently, you became different. Not in essence, but in expression. You let your frequency lead. Now you're not asking for proof. You're offering resonance. You're not trying to get reality to do something. It's already doing it. You're just becoming fluent in the language it speaks. And that language has no vocabulary. It has rhythm. It has coherence. It has stillness. Let that be your language, even if you're still learning to speak it. There's a moment quiet and unremarkable on the outside, when something in you stops chasing and starts allowing. It feels less like a victory, more like a breath. You're not trying to make anything happen. You're not asking life to hurry. You're not adjusting yourself to be chosen. You're simply here, present, aware, soft. This is the moment when your frequency becomes powerful, because now your energy is no longer distorted by urgency. It becomes pure signal. And that signal, quiet, unwavering, starts to rearrange reality without effort. You may not notice the shift at first. It will feel subtle, a decision made without panic, a moment of rest without guilt, a sense of safety in your own skin. These are not small, they are seismic. Because in the quantum world, reality reshapes itself through coherence. The more internally unified you become, the more externally fluid life feels. It's not that challenges disappear, it's that they arrive in timelines where your nervous system no longer collapses in front of them. Your frequency is no longer reacting, it's leading. Let's bring this into form. Say you desire partnership, but your signal says, I must earn love. That frequency will magnetize relationships that demand performance, not presence. Or perhaps you long for abundance, but your body still flinches at the thought of receiving. Then the field reflects a life of near misses and invisible ceilings, not as punishment. Not because you're undeserving, but because your vibration says, I'm not safe when I have. When you begin to identify these energetic contradictions, you don't need to shame them. You simply meet them with presence. You breathe into them. You teach your nervous system that receiving isn't a threat. That stillness isn't laziness. That ease isn't weakness. And in this process, a new identity begins to stabilize. Conceptually, but SOMATICALL. Why? Identity is not just a story you tell. It's a place your body returns to over and over. It's the emotional home you build through repetition. And if you've spent your life living in vigilance, in hyper-independence, in scarcity, then returning to peace will feel strange at first. You'll look for the catch. You'll wait for the shoe to drop. But keep breathing, keep anchoring, because peace isn't a reward. It's your origin. And when you remember that, your frequency will carry the tone of someone who belongs. Not just in the world, but in their own skin. This belonging is magnetic. You'll notice others responding differently. Not because you're trying to be liked, but because you're no longer splitting your energy to be understood. You are stable. And in quantum terms, stability emits a waveform that influences the field more powerfully than chaos. This is why stillness is not passive. It is a force. A frequency that says, I am here. I am whole. I am not waiting. From this place, manifestation becomes something else entirely. It's no longer a strategy. It's not about scripting, the perfect scenario, or forcing the right mood. It's about attunement. You begin to live as the version of you who already exists in the timeline you're calling in. You walk differently, speak differently, rest differently. And reality meets you there, not because you asked it to, but because you finally matched the signal of what was already yours. Now let's expand further. This alignment doesn't just affect your life. It affects the lives of those around you. Because frequency is not contained by the skin. It radiates. Your coherence becomes a stabilizing signal for others. You felt this before, those rare people whose presence calms a room, who don't say much, but whose energy creates safety. This is quantum leadership, not through dominance, but through resonance. Science calls this morphic resonance. Spirituality calls it energetic contagion. Whatever the term, the effect is real. When you embody a higher frequency, grounded, integrated, loving, you create a field that others can entrain to. You shift the collective blueprint, not by preaching, but by being God. So the quiet work you're doing, the breath you return to, when no one saw, the emotion you held without collapsing, the identity you're stabilizing in silence, it ripples outward. It teaches others what's possible. It makes the next frequency easier to find. You become a tuning fork for those still remembering their sound. But coherence doesn't mean perfection. There will still be moments of contraction, times when fear resurfaces, when the old signal whispers again. That's not failure, it's feedback. It means you're expanding. Every time you meet an old story with new awareness, you shorten its lifespan. Every time you soothe your nervous system instead of overriding it, you build safety for the future. Every time you rest without guilt, you broadcast permission into the field. This is the architecture of quantum living. It's slow. It's cellular. It's sacred. Let's return to breath. Because breath is your most immediate tuning device. Fast breath equals fight or flight. Shallow breath equals vigilance. Deep, rhythmic breath equals presence. You can't fake it. The body doesn't lie. That's why the fastest way to shift frequency isn't thinking. It's breathing. Try it now. In through the nose, soft and wide. Out through the mouth, longer than you think you need. Again, not to relax, but to return. Each breath tells the field, I am not in danger. I am safe to receive. I am coherent. And this coherence becomes your compass. You no longer chase signs, you become one. You no longer need the future to convince you. You're already living it in micro form. And eventually, the macro follows. Because in the quantum world, the smallest stable vibration wins. Now, a question arises. What if others don't understand this shift in you? What if your coherence threatens their chaos? What if your new signal challenges their old expectations? That's okay. Not everyone is meant to tune with you in every season. Some will leave. Some will resist. Some will test your new boundary. Not to punish you, but to ask, are you truly aligned? Or are you still performing safety? When you answer with calm, not defense, you confirm the signal is stable. When you release the need to be understood and choose to remain in integrity, the frequency holds. And from there, new relationships arrive. Ones that don't require translation. That speak your energetic language fluently. That meet you not because of performance, but because of presence. This is the reward of coherence. You stop magnetizing pain. You stop colliding with chaos. You stop shrinking to survive. Instead, you expand to remember, because all along, this was never about creating something new. It was about peeling back the static, removing the interference, letting the native signal hum again, the one that was always beneath the stories, beneath the fear, beneath the coping. And when that signal is stabilized, when it's no longer an occasional moment, but a state of being, then life changes. Not because you forced it, but because you remembered it. You remembered that you are not the noise. You are the note, and your life will echo the music you allow yourself to be. There is a space just beneath striving, not failure, not surrender, but something else, something quieter. A space where no one is watching, and the self is no longer performing. A space where even the dream of transformation dissolves, and what remains is stillness. This stillness is not absence. It is presence unburdened. You don't arrive here by climbing higher. You arrive by sitting deeper. In this space, you begin to sense something strange yet familiar, that life is not waiting for you to become worthy. It is only waiting for you to become available. Availability is not the same as readiness. Readiness is a performance the mind rehearses. Am I ready enough? Healed enough? Consistent enough? But availability lives in the body, in the breath. In the moment, you stop guarding the doorway to your becoming. You no longer barricade the entrance with conditions. You stand open, soft, grounded, and in that openness, the field delivers not what you begged for, but what you became available to hold. Think of it like a tuning dial. Each belief you shift, each emotion you allow, each self you stop abandoning, turns the dial, not to a louder signal, but to a cleaner one. Static dissolves, interference falls away, and suddenly you are not manifesting a new life. You are receiving a clearer transmission of the one already coded within you. But clarity requires honesty, soft, unwavering honesty. What is the story beneath your habits? What identity are you rehearsing through your exhaustion, your fear, your overthinking? These are not surface questions. They are access points. Each one invites you into a deeper frequency, the layer where your old self no longer makes the rules. Most people never reach this layer, not because they can't, but because it requires stillness. And stillness feels unfamiliar in a world that worships movement. We were taught that doing is power, that planning is protection, that control is the same as safety. And so we loop. We micromanage outcomes. We perform certainty while carrying doubt. We pray for change and then brace for disappointment. And the frequency we emit becomes fragmented dot, but the universe does not respond to fragmentation. It responds to resonance. And resonance can only emerge when you stop breaking yourself into roles and allow yourself to become whole again. This wholeness is not perfection. It is coherence. It is when the self stops arguing with itself, when the heart no longer speaks in whispers or the mind shouts over it, when the body's signals are no longer silenced by strategy. In coherence, the future does not need to be chased. It unfolds. And when it unfolds, you begin to notice the field is not mechanical, it is relational. It's not a vending machine where you press the right buttons and wait for results. It's an intelligence that responds to intimacy. The more honest you are with yourself, the more clearly life reflects that truth back to you. The more gently you hold your fear, the more fluidly reality arranges itself around your softness. The field listens not to your desires, but to the relationship you have with yourself, while desiring that. So what is that relationship made of? Listen closely. It's in how you speak to yourself when no one is watching. It's in whether you celebrate small expansions or only validate yourself after the world applauds. It's in whether you abandon your needs to keep others comfortable or anchor in your truth while allowing discomfort to be a teacher. Each of these moments, these micro choices form your energetic identity. And that identity becomes your interface with the quantum field, not the one you project outwardly, but the one your nervous system carries as your frequency. And so, if you want the field to respond differently, you don't need more effort. You need more alignment. You don't need to demand more from the universe. You need to soften your grip on who you think you must be. The most magnetic version of you is not the most polished. It is the most honest dot, and honesty lives in slowness. That slowness is how the body returns to presence. When you slow down, your breath deepens, your perceptions widen, your inner world stops echoing someone else's voice and becomes your own again. And in this slowness, something ancient reawakens, a knowing that you've never truly been disconnected. Only distracted dot from this remembrance, frequency stabilizes. You're not pushing to stay aligned. You are resting in your natural rhythm. You are no longer chasing high vibes. You are meeting your low ones with reverence. Because now you understand that vibration isn't about mood, it's about self-honesty. If you feel grief, feel it fully. That is coherence. If you feel doubt, hold it without shame. That is coherence. If you are scared, speak to the fear with kindness. That is coherence. And coherence is what bends the quantum field. Not certainty, not perfection, but presence. Is the magic most people overlook. Not because they don't value it, but because it asks for everything they've been taught to resist. Slowing down, feeling deeply, listening inwardly, letting go of control. And yet, this is the soil where all miracles grow. You begin to see the world differently, not as a place to conquer, but as a mirror to meet. You no longer scan your life for what's missing. You begin to observe what's blooming. You start to trust that nothing is random, that every delay, every heartbreak, every strange pause was not a punishment, but a recalibration of your frequency. And when that recalibration becomes your way of being, something begins to shift collectively. Others feel your field, not as noise, but as invitation. You become a lighthouse, not through force, but through glow. And this glow doesn't come from enlightenment. It comes from radical embodiment, from living your frequency, not just understanding. This is the path of the new human, not a superhuman, not a spiritual performance. This is the path of the new human, not a superhuman, not a spiritual performance, but a deeply feeling, energetically aware being who understands that their inner world is the lever that moves the outer one. You realize that you don't need to master manifestation techniques. You only need to master self-intimacy, because the most potent signal you can emit is one of congruence, a frequency where your thoughts, emotions, values, and breath are in agreement, where you are not negotiating your truth to avoid discomfort, where you are not distorting your desires to make them more acceptable. This frequency may be quiet, but it is unmistakable. It is the sound of a human who has remembered themselves. And in that remembering, something else emerges. Peace without condition. A kind of peace that isn't tied to outcomes. That doesn't need the future to unfold a certain way. It's a peace rooted in the now. In knowing that you are already inside the field of becoming. That you are not behind. That your rhythm is your superpower dot. And now that you are anchored there rooted in stillness, softened in awareness, you begin to witness a different world. A slower world. A more intelligent world. Where signs arrive without being hunted. Where connections feel immediate. Where synchronicity is the new normal. Not because you've hacked the matrix, but because you've harmonized with it. And here's the final truth of this chapter. When you live this way, you don't just change your life. You change the blueprint of what's possible for everyone who encounters your field. You become a resonant permission slip, a walking remembrance that frequency is real. That coherence is enough. That being is the new doing. You are the evidence. Let that sink in. You are not waiting to become powerful. You are remembering that you already are. And the field remembers you the moment you remember yourself. Let that be your frequency. Now, let that be your field. Let that be your truth. There comes a day, not dramatic, not loud when you look in the mirror and no longer see the one who is trying to become. You see someone who has returned, not to an old version of themselves, but to something even older, a frequency before personality, before pain, before performance. You recognize the stillness behind your eyes as familiar, as home. This is the true self, not the one invented to survive, but the one that remembers how to live. And that self doesn't vibrate with hunger or doubt. It vibrates with knowing, quiet, unshakable, clear. Yet knowing does not speak in language. It hums in rhythm. It appears in the body as a deeper breath, in the nervous system as less reactivity, in the emotions as fewer storms. You are no longer ruled by what others think or how the past shaped you. Instead, you carry a frequency that is rooted in now, not because you've eliminated your past, but because you've metabolized it. The pain no longer dictates your signal. It contributes to your strength. You are becoming an emotional architect, not just of thoughts, but of timelines. You start to realize that each emotion is not only a feeling, it's a transmitter. Joy transmits expansion. Shame transmits contraction. Compassion transmits coherence. And these signals shape the field around you with precision. You are never just feeling, you are always transmitting. And now that you know, you choose carefully. You choose to feel deeply, but not dwell. You choose to honor emotion without collapsing into it. You don't bypass pain, but you don't wear it as identity either. Instead, you let it move through you like a temporary guest felt, acknowledged, then released. And in that release, your frequency clears, becomes lighter, brighter, not louder, but more coherent. This coherence begins to affect the subtle structures of your life, the way people respond to you, the synchronicities that multiply, a strange timing of events that align in ways too precise to explain. You've stopped trying to manifest, and now manifestation happens through you, not because of your effort, but because of your state, not because now you are not asking for life to reflect a fantasy. You are broadcasting a stable signal of presence. That signal becomes your new baseline, your new field. It carries the tone of someone who no longer negotiates their worth, someone who belongs to themselves, someone who walks through the world as if nothing needs to be earned, only allow dot and still resistance arises. Because every new frequency exposes the remnants of the old, not to destroy you, but to test your stability, that you find yourself triggered, not by life's cruelty, but by life's generosity, by the arrival of what you once feared you couldn't hold. You wonder, is this really mine? And the old identity surfaces, the one who was rejected, the one who was abandoned, the one who learned to cope by staying small. This is the moment of choice, not a choice of action, but a vibration. That do you regress into the signal that says, I don't trust this? Or do you breathe deeper into the one that whispers, this is safe now? Safety is not declared, it's practiced. It's reinforced breath by breath, thought by thought, emotion by emotion. And the more you choose to anchor safety in the body, the more your frequency becomes immovable. You stop flinching at your own expansion. You stop interpreting goodness as danger. You stop chasing protection and begin living as if protection is embedded in your energy. That's when something even stranger begins. You notice that time behaves differently. Days feel spacious. Choices feel clearer. Events arrive in rhythm, with your energy instead of against it. And when contrast arises, because it still does, you meet it with curiosity instead of collapse. Contrast is no longer proof of misalignment. It's proof of refinement. You no longer ask, what's wrong with me? You ask, what is this showing me about what's ready to shift? That question is frequency gold. It reclaims power without blame. It invites movement without self-rejection. And with that mindset, your field becomes magnetic not because it demands attention, but because it is self-sustained. You no longer need the outer world to reassure you. You carry the reassurance within. And so, ironically, the outer world responds with more abundance, more connection, more resonance, not because you performed for it, but because you became available for it. You are now standing in a different dimension, not geographically, but energetically. A place where reality bends to coherence, where intentions don't require scripts or rituals, they require integrity. And you live in that integrity by remaining emotionally fluent, somatically attuned, and spiritually still. And here's what few people understand. You don't just live in one frequency. You stabilize many. Some days you carry peace. Others, clarity. Sometimes softness. Sometimes sovereignty. You become a symphony, a living multi-dimensional song. And each note has value. Even your grief holds frequency. Even your doubt carries resonance. When you hold them with awareness, they don't distort your field. They add texture. They deepen the signal. They remind the quantum field that you are not trying to escape being human. You are bringing humanity into your vibration. This is evolution, not from pain into perfection, but from fragmentation into fluidity. You are not. Replacing the old with the new, you are harmonizing the whole. This harmony becomes your broadcast. And this broadcast makes you a bridge not just for yourself, but for others. You become someone who can hold space for confusion without trying to fix it. Who can sit beside suffering without collapsing into it. Who can be a mirror that reflects back not the brokenness of others, but their forgotten coherence. You don't need to teach this. You don't need to speak it. You only need to live it. That living becomes your most powerful transmission. And over time, you notice that others begin to shift in your presence. Not because you said something profound, but because your energy invited them into remembering. You've become what you were searching for, resonant field of safety. A reminder of what it feels like to be at home in your own body, a beacon for others who are still tuning in. And this tuning never ends. It deepens. It refines. It expands. There's no final state. Only more subtle forms of coherence, more elegant vibrations, more spacious timelines. You continue to soften, to stabilize, to become more and more. Yourself. Not the self the world taught you to be, but the self that existed before the world. Spoke. The self that remembers stillness as truth. That self doesn't need to explain its frequency. It simply lives it. And in living it, you become the field. Some part of you already knew all of this, not as information, but as frequency. Long before these words arrived, before you sought answers, before you understood terms like coherence or alignment, you felt it. In childhood, in dreams, in moments of still wonder you couldn't explain. There was a quiet gravity pulling you toward this remembering, a recognition too vast for language, too gentle for dogma. You weren't seeking a method. You were following a pulse. And now here you are, still pulsing, still listening, not learning something new, but returning to something ancient that was coded into your being before breath. That code is not stored in the mind. It's embedded in your field, in the vibrational fingerprint that trails behind every step, behind every glance, behind every silence you offer the world. And that code, when fully activated, does not turn you into someone new. It allows you to stop pretending you are ever separate. Separate from the field, from timing, from trust, from truth. You are not here to figure out the universe. You are here to remember that you are the universe, folded into form. And form does not restrict you. It gives you rhythm, sensation, feedback, a place to feel the echo of your own frequency in motion. So let's explore that echo more deeply. What you see out there is not the future approaching. It's the past stabilizing. The moment your new frequency locks in, the world begins echoing that tone with breathtaking precision. But the reflection is always slightly delayed. That's why when you shift internally, it takes a moment for the field to catch up. People call this lag uncertainty. But in the quantum, it's just the echo, the harmonization, the matching of tones. And when that echo returns, it carries the texture of your vibration. That's why no one can take your timing. No one can hijack your path. The field is too precise for that. It will never return a tone you didn't first emit. It will never hand you a life you didn't become a match for. Not because it's cruel, because it's calibrated dot, and calibration is the deepest form of trust. You stop needing guarantees. You stop waiting for signs to prove you're safe. You live as if safety is encoded in your breath. You move as if the timeline has already said, yes. And when doubt arises, because it will, you meet it not as an enemy, but as a reminder. Your nervous system is still recalibrating. You're not failing. You're retuning. This retuning affects everything. The quality of your relationships, the speed of your decisions, the softness in your voice. You no longer seek power through control. You transmit it through clarity. You no longer earn belonging through sacrifice. You rest in the knowing that your frequency already includes it. And from that clarity, you begin to witness something miraculous. Life starts moving around you like a river around a stone. Not in resistance, but in intelligence. People say yes to you without knowing why. Doors open with less effort. Clarity arrives not as thought, but as resonance. And you no longer second-guess the ease, because now you understand. Ease isn't a reward for being good. It's the natural consequence of coherence. This is the paradox the mind struggles to accept, that the greatest shifts require the least force, because the mind believes in effort, in story, in structure. But the field responds to energy, to congruence, And so the more you relax, the more magnetic you become. You stop scripting the future. You start listening to what's already vibrating into form. You stop manifesting from lack. You begin magnetizing from identity. You stop proving your worth. You start anchoring it. This anchoring is subtle. It lives in your decisions. In what you tolerate. In what you no longer abandon yourself to maintain. You become a field of boundaries, not walls. You become a transmission of value, not a seeker of validation. And your life responds by reorganizing itself around this signal, not all at once, but steadily, quantumly. The quantum does not need big gestures. It responds to micro-alignment. You choose the tea instead of the coffee because your body asked. You pause before replying to hear your truth. You hold your heart when grief surfaces, not to fix it, but to welcome it home. These choices are not small. They are sacred. They are how timelines shift. And in these micro moments, you become the new version of you, not in theory, but in embodiment. You no longer chase possibility. You walk as its evidence. You don't need signs anymore. You are the sign. And that's when you become truly dangerous to the old system. Because you are. No longer controllable by fear, by scarcity, by external metrics of success. You are internally sourced, frequency-led, embodiment-rooted, and the world has no defense against someone who no longer abandons their signal. Your very presence destabilizes. Old structures not by force, but by field. This field becomes your language. People feel you before they hear you. You begin to influence not through persuasion, but through permission. You're no longer trying to convince anyone to believe. You're inviting them to remember. And this remembrance is contagious. You've become a living symbol of what's possible when someone stops running and starts vibrating. A portal for those ready to hear their own signal. A guide not through information but through coherence. But the deeper truth? You're still learning, still softening, still recalibrating. Because this journey has no arrival. It's not a staircase. It's a spiral. Each turn reveals another layer, another frequency, another truth, and you meet each layer with less resistance now. You're not scared of discomfort. You've stopped seeing contraction as failure. You know the rhythm of the quantum is pulse and breath, expansion and integration, signal and silence. You understand that light is not just clarity, it's contrast, and you honor both. You're not here to be constantly high vibe. You're here to be deeply resonant. You're not here to perform alignment. You're here to embody it. And the more you embody, the more you sense what cannot be taught, that the universe doesn't reward you for being good. It reflects you for being true. Truth is your final language. It doesn't require articulation. It doesn't negotiate. It just is. You are no longer manifesting from wounds. You are creating from wholeness. From the place in you that remembers its role, not as servant of the world's expectations, but as custodian of its own vibration. And as that custodian, you're becoming precise. With your time, your energy, your attention, you no longer indulge fragmentation. You no longer feed timelines that drain your essence. You don't hate them. You just don't harmonize with them anymore. This doesn't make you better. It makes you sovereign. And in sovereignty, you find the deepest joy not in achievement, but in alignment. You begin to feel joy when you're alone in silence. When you're walking without destination. When you're breathing without story. When you sense the entire field pulsing back your yes, simply because you stabilized it. You are the tuning fork now. And what you tune is not just your own life, but the collective. Each time you choose stillness over noise, self-compassion over critique, embodied trust over external proof, you update the grid. You ripple a new code into the field. You broadcast the forgotten music of being. And someone, somewhere, without knowing why, breathes easier, cries softer, sits deeper in themselves. That's the quantum ripple. That's how resonance works. You are no longer separate. You never were. You are the frequency that shapes not only your life, but the lives that touch your echo. Let that echo reach them gently. Let that signal live on. And now, as the final signal settles into stillness, you're no longer looking for the next step. You've become the step. You've stopped measuring your worth by arrival and started feeling your life from the inside out. What you carry now isn't strategy or striding, but a quiet resonance that hums beneath even your silence. You understand that reality bends not for those who chase it, but for those who remember how to feel it before it appears. You've become a frequency of permission for yourself, and for those who've forgotten, they are already enough. So breathe now, not to calm yourself, but to anchor your presence. Stay here in this coherence just a little longer. The field is listening, and you are ready. Not perfect, not finished, just finally aligned. Subscribe to our channel so we can meet again next time other stories are also waiting for you. And maybe, just maybe, you'll hear your own echo in them too. Until then, stay soft, stay aware, stay tuned.